To the audience, good afternoon and welcome to a webinar I think we are all going to find phenomenally insightful today. Last week, Police Minister Ricky Croock announced shocking crime statistics for the period the 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. The highest number of murders in a decade, with an average of just more than 58 people killed every day. There's a total of 42,289 reported cases of rape and a total of 18,162 carjacking cases, just to name a few. On one hand, we have a rising tide of crime in our country, and on the other, we have thousands of opportunities to thrive in a beautiful country that we all call home. We use technology on a daily basis to enhance our lives, and in many ways, have become more efficient at using it. Technology is helping to advance countless professions and doing the things that we as humans cannot tackle alone. The issue of crime in our country is no different. There are ways and many ways in which technology can help us fight this scourge. But with great technology comes great responsibility and opportunity. And there are ample opportunities for the public and private sector to come together to tackle this challenge. While the presence of Vumacams have shown significant reduction of crime in certain areas in which they operate, the issue of privacy is one that has been raised. Now, to discuss this, we are joined today by Vumacam CEO Ricky Croock, digital media law expert Emma Sadleir, and corporate advisor James Cormack to discuss the role of Vumacam's technology in fighting crime and the vital importance of privacy. So, hello and welcome to everybody. Now, panelists, two amazing panelists, I need to share with you and to our audience. You know, when I heard that we're going to be doing this webinar, I said to myself, okay, this is fantastic because this is something that has impacted my life personally. Now, living in Northcliffe and Quellarina, I noticed that in the one corner coming up a hill, there was this pole with this round thing on top and cameras. And within it, I noticed that with the community policing forums in the area, we had very high crime in this particular road and area. I mean, my neighbors got burgled a few times, etc. And having a 12-year-old daughter, I did not feel safe. What did I do? Beefed up my home security, spent money on cameras and beams and so forth, and essentially created a prison around my home to keep my family safe because I was living in fear. But I did notice, and the stats in our area proved it, that as the cameras came up, the crime dropped exponentially. It dropped. It dropped to the point that I am now comfortable going for a run in the streets without any concern because I run directly past that camera. I am now comfortable to take my daughter for a bike ride and run next to her in the street. Now, this is what this has brought to my life. And I needed to share that with you up front. So thank you to you guys. You made my area safe and I feel safe in my home and in my area. Okay? And it's okay that you see me because every time I drive past, I'll wave because, yo, I feel safe. You are the guardian angel around me. Emma, let's kick off with you. Vumacam technology captures behavior in the public realm. What are reasonable expectations of privacy when we are in public? And when an operation like Vumacam captures the footage in the public domain? In terms of the promulgation of POPI, what is Vumacam responsible for doing in terms of the data that they capture and protecting the privacy of individuals?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that maybe we start off by just taking a step back and thinking about privacy law generally. What is privacy? What does it mean for all of us? What does the law say? What does this POPI thing mean? So I think maybe let's start with the common law definition of POPI, of privacy. So up until fairly recently, all we had to go on was the common law right to privacy. Now, we all have the right to privacy. Section 14 of the Constitution says that everybody has the right to privacy. Now, that's a fundamental constitutional right? What does it mean? It means that if somebody infringes my privacy, then I can sue them. If somebody takes a picture of me, a naked picture of me and puts it on the front page of the newspaper, they've infringed my privacy. There are other issues as well, probably dignity as well, but they've infringed my privacy. I want to sue them. So then the question is, well, where do we draw this line between conflicting rights. So in this case, it would be the right to safety and security on the one hand, and individuals' rights to privacy on the other hand. Or it might be the right to somebody's freedom of expression on the one hand and the right to privacy on the other. Because basically what our law says is that we've got this unbelievable constitution and all these rights in the Bill of Rights, but there isn't one right which is more important than other rights. You know, there's no absolute right, except maybe the right to life, right? So usually that's a trump card. Like my right to life is more important than somebody else's right when we're doing that balancing exercise. But generally, it's a balancing act. We've got right to dignity on the one hand, right to privacy, right to freedom of expression, right to safety and security. Where do we draw the line between these conflicting rights? So what the law has done over literally decades is come up with a common law test for privacy, which basically says this. If I can show that I have a legitimate expectation of privacy in a particular set of circumstances, and somebody infringes it, then I can sue them. So I'm standing on stage, I'm talking to 3,000 people. Somebody in the audience takes a picture of me. Are they infringing my privacy? In that moment, do I have a right to privacy? The answer is no, right? When I'm in a public place, I have a much lower expectation of privacy than when I'm in my own home. When I'm dressed, I've got a lesser right to privacy than when I'm not dressed. So let's go back to that example of the person taking a picture of me on the stage, right? So that same person comes to my house one night, uninvited, and they take a picture of me naked in my bedroom. Right, so it's the same person and the same camera and the same subject, but different expectations of privacy because your expectation of privacy changes because of the circumstance. So they take this picture of me. Are they infringing my privacy? Absolutely. Okay, so that's the first test, is the closer you get to the privacy of a person, the more, if it's inside their own homes, if it's to do with their medical, for example, your HIV status, your pregnancy status, how much money you have in the bank, those things are very, very private things. What I'm doing on the street, what I'm doing out in public, much less expectation of privacy. Now, even if you can show that you have a right to privacy in a set of circumstances, there are two defenses to a privacy infringement. The first is consent. You can publish those naked pictures of me, I give you permission, right? You can publish that I'm HIV positive, you can publish how much money I've got in my bank account, I give you permission. The second defense is what we call public interest, which is basically, we should call it public benefit. It's because it's what's in the benefit to the public, not what's interesting to the public. So say somebody comes to my house and takes a picture of me naked in my bedroom, and they publish it. They're infringing my privacy. But say I wasn't just standing in front of my cupboard deciding what to wear that day. I was sitting on the bed injecting heroin, right? Doing something illegal. Maybe I was involved in domestic violence. I was beating the hell out of somebody. And somebody posts that footage, that video, or that photo on the internet, on social media, on a newspaper. Even though my privacy, I would ordinarily have an expectation of privacy, that goes out the window because there's a benefit to the public, right?
Right.
So that's the common law background. Do you have an expectation of privacy? Generally, what you're doing in a public space, there isn't an expectation of privacy, right? You would have to show that there's an expectation of privacy. So that's where we've been for a long time. And we've had so many interesting cases along these lines. I'm thinking of when Mantu Shabalala Msimang was in hospital and she was having a bottle of whiskey for breakfast and another one for lunch and a third one for supper. And then the Sunday Times published her health records. Now, generally, you have an intense right to privacy over what you're doing, over your health records, right? Your medical record, your file with all your medical information in the hospital. And the Sunday Times published it, and the court said that they were entitled to publish it because the benefit to the public, and us knowing that our Minister of Health at the time, who was on a transplant list, was behaving in such a way in hospital, was more important than her right to privacy in that moment. So the whole thing is a balance. And when we're thinking of footage, surveillance footage, I'm reminded of a case, and it's the case I hadn't thought about for years. Was a case, it was brought 5 minutes before Carte Blanche was due to air on a Sunday night. It was brought by the MEC for Health in Mpumalanga. And basically what Carte Blanche had done was that they'd set up surreptitious footage inside a hospital to show that there'd been maltreatment of abortion patients. So people were coming in to have abortions, and obviously the nurses who had moral difficulties with this were treating these treating these patients incredibly badly. I mean, really badly, beating them, and they were, I can't even go into details. And they tried to bring an interdict to say that you can't publish it, and the court said no, there's public interest in this footage, even though it was illegally obtained, even though everybody had a right to privacy, which was infringed. The benefit of the public was more important. that's where we are. The first step, do you have a legitimate expectation of privacy? If you do and it's infringed, is there a public interest override? And then suddenly this POPI, which sounds so floral, but isn't that floral, it's actually damn boring, came into force on the 1st of July this year.
Yeah.
There's one year for compliance, and basically that law is everything to do with our private information. So every time you give private information, either willingly or unwillingly, to somebody, you go to the gym and you sign up a contract, or somebody takes a picture of you entering a shopping center, as soon as somebody holds personal information on you, then you fall within the realms of POPI. And POPI basically says, this is how you have to store the information, this is how you have to look after it, this is what you're allowed to use it for, this is how long you're allowed to keep it for, all of those rules. So that's where we are with the privacy law, and basically, you know, do you have an expectation of privacy over what you're doing in the street? I would say no. Even if you did, there's for me certainly a public interest override because of the immense security benefits of these cameras.
That's fantastic to know, and I think that you ended off on something that is so critical. There's an immense security benefit of these cameras, and when we look at that, if I could just wrap up that first question with you, is to say that regarding Vumacam's responsibility in terms of the data that they're capturing and protecting, how does this impact the individuals? Should there be a concern on the individual's part, or is it in a greater need of security of the individual in that area?
Yeah, so it's a fascinating question, that, and you know, the most important thing, I suppose, to note quickly about POPI is that as soon as information is anonymized, as soon as you don't know that this specific information attaches to that specific person, then you fall outside of the realm of POPI. So you don't even have to worry about POPI. And basically, we know that these Vumacam cameras do not use facial recognition technology, and therefore that information does not attach to a specific person. Therefore, it's anonymized, and therefore it falls well outside the realm of POPI. The only time that this kind of footage, I would imagine, would ever land up in public is if an offense had been committed. And if you are infringing the privacy of a criminal, well, then there's a huge public interest override. Literally 1 minute before I came on this webcam, I got and so anybody who's watching this who knows me would know my best friend Jacques, right? So yesterday he was walking home from the shops. He lives in Killarney, and he was beaten over the head, and his cell phone was stolen. And he's just sent me the footage right now as I was coming in. He lives in a really nice sort of complexy place, and they had their private security cameras, and they were able to very quickly use this footage in order for crime detection. So it's so important. It's just such a no-brainer that what limited privacy infringement there could be, and I can't even think that there could be one, because what you're doing in public space, there isn't a privacy infringement. But if there is, and that, for example, that content has to be circulated more broadly for the purposes of crime prevention, then the public interest would override that individual's right to privacy.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for that insight and giving us that context, in particular to this Vumacam discussion that we're now having. Because personally, take my picture if that's the case, keep my details on there, whatever you need to do. You are keeping me safe. And for me, that overrides anything in my realm of family and personal safety. Ricky, I'm excited to know about how Vumacam came about, and can you explain how the Vumacam technology works? Is any data captured that can be linked to an individual to the extent that it can identify that person?
Perfect. So yeah, thanks for having us. I think maybe I'll answer the question, before I tell you the history. So in no way can, and I think, to Emma's point is that, we look at that anonymization of data. So we're really interested in understanding situational awareness and things that are happening outside the norm, and then giving it to security companies who can then validate it, have a look at what it is, and decide if they're going to dispatch a vehicle or not. So really, it's really situational awareness, and we'll get into the technicalities and how it all basically works. But to give you some background, it's not something new that we wake up one day to say, let's get into the security and let's understand, just building a massive CCTV network, and the benefits of it. So we've lived this for the last 15 years. We've been on the security side of things where we've, protected communities for many, many years. And we've been involved in like that community security space, working with resident associations, dealing with the complaints, going out to people who have been hit over the head, and have had traumatic experience. And over the years, what dawned on us, and as you started off the show, is saying that crime is rampant and crime is actually out of control. And we actually need to do something about it. And you know, besides just having a security company and competing with the 11,000 other security companies, we just said, why don't we build out a camera platform? So really, let's not be a security company. Let's not run control rooms, but let's enable all the security providers to adapt technology and enable and give a better service to their customers. But at the same time, the big challenge that you've got in the security industry is that everyone's trying to fight in silos. So everyone's got their security solution and, you know, looking after you in Northcliffe and someone else in Killarney, but the same perpetrators that hit Jacques over the head in Killarney will be the ones that will potentially try to attack you when you're running, you know, in the streets. And what we want to try to do is we want to make sure that all that information comes to a central point so that the CCTV footage that is taken off, you know, the complexes cameras in Killarney are input into the system with a case number and investigating officer. And then when, you know, the same perpetrators enter into your area, well, your local security company gets notified that that car is now potentially going around and they can intercept and prevent that car from attacking you. And really what we want to try to do is build out this network of cameras so that, you know, and really enable the security companies to all fight the same fight and start pulling in the same direction, as opposed to everyone trying to fight in silos. And that's really what our experience has been. And as connectivity has been better and there's been this rollout of fiber, you know, then you can go and put up these cameras, you put them into a central location, and you actually want one party who's saying, guys, let me put my hand in my pocket. Let me put in, you know, let me put up the infrastructure. Let's enable the security providers. Let's enable SAPs. Let's enable JMPD, and let's create this ecosystem so we can all fight the same fight. Because, you know, as I said, if everyone's trying to fight on their own, no one's going to know that same, you know, modus operandi and the same criminals that hit Jacques and Killarney are the ones that are potentially going to hit and attack you on your run. And that's really the philosophy and where we come from.
I think that's fantastic, Ricky, because what you're speaking about is collaboration in the industry and you being that glue that plugs them all together. You know, we always say success in workplaces equates to collaboration. Collaboration means you're singing off the same hymn sheet. If you're singing off the same hymn sheet, it becomes an harmonious tune, an harmonious song. What you're trying to do is, and what you are doing actually, is pulling that in. You know, I didn't understand the technical aspects behind it this deep, and I have a deeper appreciation for it, knowing that if something else happened somewhere else and was notified there, the security in my area will be notified too. Again, enhancing my sense of well-being in my area. Thank you for that insight. Now, James, when rolling out the Vumacam project, what steps were taken to ensure that Vumacam met both legal and privacy and data protection regulations?
Yeah, thanks. So I think as Emma has highlighted, the primary issue for us is not necessarily the technology. It's more related to the challenges that this potentially presents to privacy. And in order for us to persuade our shareholders to part with quite a lot of money prior to this project kicking off, we had to establish very clearly what those boundaries were going to be. And so when you look at that, you obviously consider common law, as Emma has said, you consider national legislation, provincial legislation, and then obviously we're operating within cities, so you need to consider bylaws. So when we take a look through each one of those areas of law, you really then quickly discover that for all intents and purposes, because nobody has done this before at this scale, we find ourselves in this position where there isn't clarity as to exactly what we need to do. So you need to then go beyond what would probably be reasonable. So to Emma's point, up until July this year, the sort of primary regulatory framework that we operate under, which is now POPI, wasn't in fact in place. It was a published law, but it wasn't law. So that for us is the primary instrument by which we hope to be governed. And we think that it's a very, very well thought out piece of legislation, even though we may not feel that you have the same entitlement to privacy in the public space. We went above and beyond in terms of constructing this business and the technology to effectively be POPI compliant to the best of our ability on day one. That's the primary focus for us. From a domestic bylaw perspective in the cities that we operate in, There really is only one city in South Africa that has, in fact, got a CCTV policy and bylaw, and that's the city of Cape Town. The city of Johannesburg, where our primary business is today, doesn't actually have a CCTV policy and bylaw. Whilst we're working on that with them, they currently don't have that in place. But we also are very alive to the fact that we need to be completely engaged and transparent with whoever wants to come and look at our infrastructure, understand the way that we've constructed this business, to be engaging with whoever wants to come along and effectively help us do something that's never been done before. I think that's a hugely important point. We have got absolutely nothing to hide, and we welcome any engagement with anybody who can help us make this better, to improve it in areas where they can assist. One of the provisions of POPI is that each industry can create its code of conduct in respect of what it wants to effectively have as the rules of the road in respect of their industry in relation to POPI. And we would welcome that. We really want to engage with the information regulator, like we've engaged with the city of Joburg, like we've engaged with SAPS, JMPB, in order to get this thing that never has been done or tried before to be something that works for everybody. And I think that really is very important to us. We also are licensed with, in terms of the Electronic Communications Act, we're obviously running a electronic communications network. So we have a license from ICASA. We've also were advised that we needed to be licensed with CERA, which regulates the private security industry. We may not agree that we are providing security services. We think we're a technology company, but nevertheless, we went ahead, registered, certified with CERA. So we've really gone above and beyond to make sure that we are compliant with anything that is going to impact our business. And I think on the basis of that structure and those steps that we've taken, that's how we effectively got our shareholders over the line to say it hasn't been done before, something really innovative. And you need to understand that sometimes the law and regulatory bodies are not able to keep pace with the rate of technology and the pace at which it develops, but that doesn't mean you should do nothing. And I think that's really the approach that we've taken, and our shareholders have bought into that.
No, perfect, James. Thank you for that. And I think that, giving comfort that you're transparent. You opened up to say, if you've got insider information or you want to find out about something, let us know. And now that speaks to such belief in the due diligence done in every facet to open up yourself in that way. So I think, thank you for that. That shows great leadership and foresight from an organization in being transparent with something that is so important for people, and that is making sure that they're safe. So that's great. Emma, when new technology comes into play, how reasonable is it for laws to exist prior to innovation existing? Let's take your area of expertise, for example, social media, or even mobile phone tech, the internet, television, or even the good old days of the landline phone. Did laws exist to govern social media prior to it being launched, while the law developed alongside innovation?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this is the law playing catch up. So when I go to dinner parties and people, when I go to dinner parties in the halcyon days when I used to go to dinner parties, and people say, but it must be so complicated being a social media lawyer. How do you stay on top of all the new laws? And I just kind of laugh at them, because there are no new special laws. The law is constantly playing catch up, and we do have some development. POPI, as we've been talking about, we've just had the Books and Publications Amendment Act passed. We're still waiting for it to become effective, which has introduced this new crime of revenge pornography, or image-based violence, as we call it. But in general, what we do with social media is that we treat the content online in exactly the same way as we treated public content on all other public platforms forever. So we treat what I'm saying on a WhatsApp group or on Facebook in exactly the same way as if I'd written it on the front page of the newspaper or on a poster. And I wrote an opinion last week for somebody, and it was about, it sounds complicated, but liability for user-generated content. By that I mean, if I own a website or a Facebook page and somebody else comes and writes on it, am I, as the administrator, responsible for it? And I relied on a case from 1918, a case called Byrne versus Dean, where we are using these very old laws in these very new ways. So the principles are there. The principles generally are good, but it's often a question of how we're gonna apply these very old laws to these very new ways of communicating or living, as we're dealing with here.
Emma, the reality that you spoke about is that laws are continually evolving and being added to it. There is a process in place with that, and more often than not, is innovation constantly is leading, and laws tend to follow. So within that space, I do have comfort that, as we heard from James and from Ricky, that they have looked at that and have abided to all the laws that are relevant and prepared for the laws that are coming in, like this POPI Act that has come in recently. Now, Emma,
absolutely, yeah.
You were to take the risk of a privacy or data breach via Vumacam and compare it to information that could identify a person through their online activity, whether that be online forms or social media profiles. What would you say is a bigger risk?
Yeah, when people say to me, oh, privacy is dead, get over it, I get furious. I'm a huge privacy advocate. I think about privacy a lot. I think about the privacy of my family. I think about the privacy of my colleagues. I think that we've got to think about privacy. And I can tell you that, privacy is one of the most important things to me. But it's not quite as important as the right to life, where we're dealing with these balancing acts. So for example, when we're talking about individuals' right to privacy. The reality is that we do live in this world where we have all become celebrities, and our friends and our families and our colleagues have become the paparazzi, and we paparazzi each other and we paparazzi ourselves. And I think that there's no question there is a diminished right to privacy in the digital age, because people share so much about themselves. Because we take pictures of where we go and who we see and what we do and what we wear and what we eat, and it is really like CCTV footage of our lives. So there's no question that the expectation of privacy these days, the analysis of do I have a legitimate expectation of privacy in a particular set of circumstances, is very different to the pre-social media age, because we just give up so much about ourselves. Whenever we open a Facebook account, open an Instagram account, use WhatsApp, you are inherently giving up a huge amount of your privacy just by virtue of you ticking a little box saying I agree to your terms and conditions. Every time I open up my bank app and they use my face to open it, every time, it's just, we are living in a world of diminished privacy, and often that's very convenient. That's great. I think where people draw the line, and I think we really saw this in the fallout of the Cambridge Analytica scandal, is where people start using that kind of information for social engineering. There I think people got the hell in. But generally, every time I log onto Facebook and I'm shown adverts which are directly targeted at me, and I think to myself, well, how do they know that about me? Like, I haven't even told my best friend that information about me, and now they know this. That is the reality of the world we live in. So as soon as you have any kind of, and I reminded years ago, Daniel Radcliffe, the guy who played Harry Potter, was talking about these celebrities who complain about their infringements of privacy, but they're the ones taking pictures of themselves and publishing these pictures for the world to see. So if you have even the most minuscule presence on social media, I think you have a significantly diminished your own expectation of privacy, because it is such a subjective test.
Wow, thank you for that insight. Thank you so much. Now, James, what laws and bylaws did Vumacam have to uphold when rolling out the network? And have there been any bylaws breached by Vumacam?
We go through a thorough review of everything that may apply to us, and obviously you come to a local level in the city, and you're then considering city law, which is essentially a set of bylaws. And as I said previously, you need to make sure that you understand what those are, how to comply with them. As I said, the only city in South Africa that we're aware of that does actually have CCTV-related policies and bylaws is the city of Cape Town. So the city of Johannesburg is working on that. We have engaged with their group legal, we've engaged with their city manager in order to be part of the process of defining what those policies and bylaws as they relate to CCTV might be. So once you understand that you don't actually have that framework, you then need to be extra responsible about how you go about doing it. And I think what's important to know is that, as I said also, because we are rolling out an electronic communication networks and infrastructure, we're licensed by ICASA in terms of the Electronic Communications Act. And as such, we're able to apply for way leaves for the deployment of this infrastructure across the city of Johannesburg, which is what we've done. And each and every Vumacam pole that you see with the dome and the cameras is deployed in terms of a way leave that we've obtained from the city of Johannesburg. That's not been smooth sailing, simply because, again, they don't have a framework for us. So, it's a stop-start affair. But to date, every single piece of that infrastructure is deployed in terms of a way leave that we have obtained from the city of Johannesburg, from the Johannesburg Road Agency, and as part of our responsibilities as a licensee in terms of the Electronic Communications Act. So just that's at a local level. And as I said previously, we've prepared this business for compliance with POPI in all respects that we could manage. I'm sure there's going to be things that the regulator will help us with, and we welcome that engagement. And I think importantly, probably the most advanced equivalent to POPI is the GDPR, which is the European equivalent of POPI, for want of a better word. And we've actually considered what is required in terms of the GDPR and systems associated with that, and systems that have been certified in terms of the GDPR, and we've implemented those within our business. So obviously POPI implementation is not going to be the same as GDPR, but it's a very similar act. It's got very similar objectives, and we think that if we built that sort of GDPR compliance into our business, it'll place us in good stead for when we are looking to construct this CCTV code of conduct with the information regulator.
All right, no, perfect. Thank you for that, James. James, a quick one. I hear an echo from your microphone. Could I ask you to just refresh your browser, click on the microphone and camera, and you'll join us back in, just to refresh your browser? Fantastic.
No problem. I'll do that.
Ricky, while we wait for James, how much has crime reduced in the areas where your cameras are placed?
Perfect. So I think this is something that, it's one of the hardest questions that we can answer, because how do you quantify, what crime would have taken place if you didn't have your cameras? We've seen results, and over the years, we've started with CCTV 12 years ago when we put up, cameras in the area of Dunkeld. And back then, 12 years ago, we saw from going a crime a week to a crime every 6 months just in that little suburb. So, like back then, it was immediate. As soon as you put up the cameras, we saw, crime moving out. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges, and also one of the driving forces why we said we need to do it on this large scale, because we don't want to just displace crime. We actually want to try help solve crime. So we don't want to push it to other areas. We don't want to push it into Soweto or Alexandra or whatever the case might be. We actually want to have this blanket effect. So when guys do have an incident and they leave, you're not going to get off the grid. We're going to be able to intercept you, through our channel partners, through the security companies, with SAPS, with JMPD, and actually want an arrest to take place, as opposed to, moving crime out of different areas. Because it hasn't been, we haven't switched on all the cameras all at the same time, we have seen densification of cameras in certain areas. And where we have densified, we've seen, crime reduce up to, 70, 80%, in those areas. So it's been a massive impact. But scientifically, it's quite a difficult calculation to run in terms of, how much crime did you prevent, and at what scale is crime increasing, and what are the crime effects that's happening in that specific suburb. But as I can say is, the network effect, and with our channel partners, the guys are affecting probably up to sometimes 3-4 arrests a day off the platform. And in certain areas, where we have taken a conscious stat recording, we've seen that reducing by 70-80% in those specific areas.
Wow, I think that's fantastic to know. But I also think it boils down to my feeling in my area. I feel my area safe, and I'm happy with that. Am I going to move? No, I'm not. Am I happy with my daughter to be in the road with me? Yes, I am. So I think that alone is not a scientific stat, but it's something that is the subjective stat, that the feeling in that area is now a lot safer. The smell is a lot safer. So I think there's many ways to look at that, but it's great to know. And I think that, we are on the right trajectory with the support of Vumacam in these areas. Now, James, there have been a handful of detractors that have made claims on social media that Vumacam has acted against the law. Is that true?
No, so I mean, Emma will tell you that the law is not necessarily as clear cut in this area as we would like it. So you're going to get people who have different opinions, different views. We welcome any engagement. Personally, I've dealt with one or two of the parties that you've mentioned personally, and I've invited these people to come to our office, to go through what we do, to help us, to engage with us, to make it better and address their concerns. We don't profess to know everything. It's not possible. Yeah. We are doing something that has never been done before. So there are going to be areas where we can improve on. But the fundamental thing is we have chosen as shareholders, as investors, to try and do something to assist in addressing one of the biggest challenges in our country. And in order to do that, we've chosen this particular direction. Anybody who has a difference of opinion about what we're doing, how we're going about doing it, we want to engage. We are, as I said, we've engaged with the City of Johannesburg, we're engaging with the information regulator. Our door is always open. Some people choose not to come to the door. There's nothing we can do about that. We must move on. But we remain open invitation to anybody who wants to understand it better, to come and have a look, to make sure that we are complying wherever we can. Welcome to engage.
Maybe I can just jump in there.
Because you're jumping the screen.
I would like to jump in because James said, the law is not clear at this point. And I can tell you the law is clear. Where it comes to defamation, so individuals can sue for defamation, corporates can sue for defamation. If somebody is spreading false news, fake news about you, disinformation, misinformation, so for example, some of the content that I've seen is much along the lines of Vumacam using facial recognition technology, and this is what they're doing, like just crazy, unfounded, baseless allegations. And the law is absolutely consistent in this, that if you are going to defame an individual or defame a company, then the person who's making those defamatory allegations have a duty to prove that what they're saying is true. You can't say whatever you want if it's not true. Now, I'm not saying that you can't criticize. Of course you can criticize. The law in South Africa allows you to be very extreme in your opinions, provided they're honestly held opinions, they're not motivated by malice, and they're based on truth. Now, if the information that is, I'm thinking of the big case last year, the EFF Trevor Manuel case, where the EFF released a statement saying that Trevor Manuel was nepotistic and had appointed his cousin as the SARS commissioner. Just complete rubbish, right? And Trevor Manuel sued in that case, was awarded 500,000 Rand in damages. They had to release an apology, a retraction. So basically, let me just quickly take you through the law of defamation. If you're going to defame an individual or a company, then you have to show three things: that the content was published to one other person. So even if you're making these allegations on a WhatsApp group, it's published. It must refer to you or the company directly or indirectly. So even if I can join the dots, I say the head of Vumacam, I know you're talking about Ricky, right? Even if you haven't actually named him. And then it must hurt your reputation. To say that somebody is behaving illegally, unethically, then there's no question that is defamatory. And the person making those allegations, regardless of the platform they're making them on, has a duty, has the onus in law to show that what they're saying is true and for the benefit of the public. Now, if you're calling out a company for behaving illegally, no question is public interest, public benefit. But you have to show that what you're saying is true or substantively true. And I just warn, if you're going to jump on the defamation bandwagon, make sure you've got your facts in order.
No, I think that's so true. I think, I often refer to it that in social media, you notice people are extremely brave, in voicing and saying things, but have your facts ready, have it right, have it in your hands, because something will happen that's not going to be very pleasant from a defamation perspective. Now, James, with the detractors, what has the impact been on the work that Vumacam is currently doing? Have they had any at all?
No, so I mean, I think we obviously understand our mission. We know what we need to do. We've got customers in terms of the private security companies that have seen tremendous results. We've had great impact in respect of the cooperation that it enables between SAPS, JMPD, and those private security companies. We want to listen to everybody. We want to have meaningful engagement with anybody who wants to discuss our business model and our business and our technology. And once we've offered that opportunity over and over again, and effectively is spurned, frankly, we must move on, because ultimately we have a mission. And is it impactful? Yes. Do we think it's going to be the demise of our mission? Absolutely not. We really understand what we need to do and how we're going about doing it. I don't think that we really are going to be sidetracked by people who really have a personal opinion. And we're happy to discuss that personal opinion, but at the end of the day, we know what we need to do, and we're going to carry on doing it.
Fantastic.
But can I jump in there? So it's my 2 cents, saying just in quickly. I think, from our perspective, and obviously it's my name and, the whole philosophy, and, I've been in this from the beginning, and to get called a liar and a thief and this on Twitter, it doesn't really concern me, because I know what we're doing. And for me, it's that one person that we can take off the streets. It doesn't affect the next 10, parties that criminal syndicates could have affected. And for me, that's what gets me up every morning, and knowing that, we can really make a difference. And we know that we take, how much we spend in terms of, legal and opinions, and making sure that we're doing everything and doing it, over and above what's actually required from us. And then I think, when you take it back a step, we actually go so far as we're getting called from communities and security companies to put these cameras into the areas. And we actually go out with them to ask the communities if this is something that they want and what they endorse. And when you get the polls back, up to 96% of people are all in favor of this. So actually what we're talking about here is a handful of people, and it's actually the same 5 people that keep on going on this. So yes, we take it seriously. We understand, as James has said multiple times, we will engage with you. We've invited them personally, but 96% of people, and overarching all of that, is that one criminal that we can take off the streets makes us all beneficial and worthwhile, because, it could be you and your daughter running, or it could be my family, or it could be whatever the case might be. And, it's that important to us. And that's why we can choose to engage and fight. But actually, I don't want to carry on this conversation, because the people want these cameras to keep them safer. As you said, with up to 58 murders a day, I'm saying we're living in a crazy, crazy time and a crazy place, and we actually have to do something about it.
Totally, full stop. And something is being done. Vumacam is doing something. It's not just theory. It's not just we want to, we plan to, we're doing it. Now, Ricky, there's been a lot of comments in our section so far and questions regarding facial recognition technology. So does Vumacam use facial recognition technology? And do you believe that facial recognition technology as it stands is reliable?
Perfect. So we don't use any facial recognition technology. We haven't designed or set up the system for that. As I alluded to right in the beginning, ours is really situational awareness to understand something unusual is happening, and then get a body or a tactical vehicle, SAPS or JMPD, to investigate further. We're very reliant, and we've used it extensively on the license plate recognition, which basically talks to the SAPS and the Unicode database and tells you if a car's stolen as it's entering into your area. And that's been proven to be very successful, and most of the rest and successes have come through the license plate technology. But facial, facial is that element that we think goes into the privacy side, and we've then chosen to stay away. We also don't think the technology is at that level yet in terms of, how accurate and reliable So, and also there's no database that you're going to query that against. So unless we can have access to a database, information regulator, SAPs, and everyone says this is the direction that we want to go to, we've chosen to stay away from facial, technology in the way that we've set up the solution and the technology stack that we've chosen.
All right, fantastic. Emma, so we know that Vumacam isn't looking at facial recognition, but it's fascinating how quickly we all allow facial recognition into our lives through our phones. You mentioned banking apps, social media, and other technological platforms. How much of a profile can a person build online, and how much data exists that can be a possible risk to an individual?
So there's a lot of that. I think that it's not even worth going down that route, to be honest, because it's not applicable. This company has said they do not use facial recognition technology, and therefore, and I'm seeing in the comments here people still saying they do use facial recognition technology. There's an undertaking that they don't use facial recognition technology. So I think it's not an avenue that we should even go down. But I am interested in some of the comments, and I'm not sure if everyone's reading the comments, about whether or not you can be broadcast on television without your consent. Yeah. And I think that's a very interesting one. If you go and watch the Springboks, and those again, halcyon days. But when you go and watch the Springboks, or you go and watch the Proteas, or earlier this year I was lucky enough to go to the great big tennis game at the Cape Town Stadium, and at one stage the camera did zoom in on me, and I got all these messages from my friends saying, "Ha, we've seen you on TV." Now I didn't go and sign a release form saying I could be on TV. I was in a public crowd. I was in a public space. I didn't walk past any sign that said you are now entering a CCTV surveillance zone. But I know that when I go to an event like that, I could be shown on television. I saw somebody saying you can sue CNN because they showed you. That's absolute rubbish. Where you're being interviewed, maybe you need to sign a release form. But if you're in the background, like I'm thinking of, I was watching ENCA, and there's all the footage of people standing in the queues to collect their grants. They didn't go and get every single person in the queue to sign a release form saying, I am happy to be on TV. But you see them quite clearly going through that. And that's being broadcast for the whole country to see. This footage that is being obtained by Vumacam is not being broadcast for the whole country to see. It's being seen by a very specific handful of people who have permission to access that content, and it is not released more broadly than that. So we go back to this expectations of privacy. Do you have expectations of privacy in a public place? Yes, you do, but it's a significantly decreased expectation of privacy by virtue of you being in a public space. The footage from these Vumacam cameras, it's not directed into your house where I can see into your window and see you topless tanning by your swimming pool. This is footage of what you're doing on the street, right? There is a big difference between what's happening in a public place and what's happening in a private place.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. And thank you for addressing some of the comments in there. We are getting to the comments and the questions at the end, with those that we can get to. But Emma, you've eliminated a few for us to revert back to. So awesome. Kudos to you. You're like the Vumacam on this webinar, have you noticed? Keeping us on track and keeping us safe.
My experience is sometimes you just got to correct an impression, because then there are all these comments going on the fact of like we've got to just cure some of the comments and make sure that people are reading the right thing.
Thank you so much. Now, Ricky, in comparison, how much data could exist for a person who, say, passes a Vumacam twice a day on their way to work and returning from work?
So how much data is you're going to look at the frame rate and the snippet of that, which is kilobits, but we don't know. So we don't know how many times that you're going past our cameras unless your number plate is on a vehicle of interest. You actually anonymize, so you're not going to. We won't know that it's you passing our cameras only unless you've been involved in a crime and you've landed up onto the SAPS database. Will that then trigger an alert and then send it into the security company's control rooms? The size of the frame and the amount of data, I'm saying, the cameras generate a lot of data, but it's anonymized data with only probably 1% of that being actual vehicles of interest or unusual behavior that then flags into the control room. The rest of the 99% of that footage gets flushed through the system without anyone even looking at it. So yes, it generates petabytes of data. And we have to stream, across, and luckily enough, there's good fiber connectivity in the country, and we can put it and build out these these machines. But that footage is really just coming through, querying against the database, yes or no. Otherwise, it's getting flushed through. And I think that's where we've looked at the EU GDPR standards and POPI and the 30-day storage and all of these kind of things in terms of the way that we've set up our business. But yeah, it's something that's as I said, it's anonymized and doesn't something that's not looked at, and that's what's there.
Oh, fantastic. Ricky, I think we've established that Vumacam is a strong line of defense in fighting crime. Can you tell us some of your greatest successes to date, and also a little about what other areas of the cameras that they can assist in?
Perfect. So I think it was earlier last month where it actually, we had this, you go and you build this business model and you build out the technology stack and you say, like, imagine it could work like this. And then 2 years later, it plays out exactly as if how you envisaged it. And we had an incident where there was, occupants of a car that were involved in a crime, and a security company, logged the number plate in the CBD. And then they, dispatched SAPs, and, they couldn't find that vehicle. And 2 hours later, that same vehicle appeared in Parktown North and was picked up, again via one of our cameras. And then, that security company then started chasing and trying to block them off while we dispatched SAPs. It actually went on to another group where coordinates quite a few other security companies, and through the cameras, they managed to, I think it was up to like 15 different security companies that coordinated an effort to block the routes of this vehicle and basically choke them in and apprehend and arrest the guys. And it just shows the full network of the possibilities of having that same platform from the CBD, to four ways, and that same real-time information being disseminated into the various security, control rooms, leading to that arrest. And it's something that was really like meaningful to me, because it's something, we said, imagine it could happen like this, and it's exactly how it played out. And those guys were arrested, and guns taken off the street and guys put behind bars. I think, we've had so many cases, and I say so many, I'm saying every single day there's a positive instance of what takes place, where, guys can come into an area, cause an incident, they actually change the number plates in that area and leave with another number plates, and they carry on. Because we've got, that density of cameras, we can then say, right, that they, left on this, they entered in this car, left with this number plate, put the new number plate into the system, and then they get arrested, in another suburb a few hours later. And again, you prevent that incident from taking place. And another one that was actually quite interesting to me is when an incident took place in a shopping center. And I think, we don't go to too many shopping centers, but there has been quite a lot of incidents of late, at these shopping centers. And the guys leave, and you get the footage off the camera leaving the shopping center. And then 2 days later, that same vehicle going through one of the areas apprehended, and then you pull them back to the scene of the crime, and you solve that crime with the perpetrators. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of times that this has been beneficial, and that's why I'm saying, for me, yes, privacy is the utmost importance for us, and that's why we tick the box, and that's why we're so thin. But the real fact that this thing makes a difference, and we're fighting something that's probably, bigger than any other, pandemic that we've got in our country. It's just, that's, as I said, that's what gets us up in the morning, and that's what gets us so motivated and going on to the mission, as James called it, in building this thing out.
I feel that passion. I feel that mission spirit that comes through. And I think that is what drives the momentum forward on this project. And at the end of the day is, with at least one story you mentioned today, and I'm sure there are many more, that saves lives, that saves trauma, that saves people's, peace of mind. And it allows them to live free within the space by which they call home, and the suburbs and the areas. And not just that, it's beyond that. It's in the city. And that is what the beauty of this opportunity is that you have created and are currently rolling out. Now, Ricky, where the cameras do exist, have you had any complaints from people in the area complaining of their privacy being breached in any way?
No, it's the same handful of people that, are the ones that are putting out these claims onto Twitter. I think one or two people live in areas that's put up cameras, and they're not even our cameras. Where those cameras exist in their neighborhood, and that's what it is. But as I said, like everyone who we speak to only has a positive, impact. And when you can show them and showcase, and that's why I think it's quite important that we're doing these kind of things to explain to people how it actually is used, and what is the purpose and what are the successes out of it. Everyone immediately feels a lot more comfortable, and it's something that we take seriously. And you actually want someone who's going to go over and beyond. You don't want multiple security companies each putting up their own camera systems, because it's impossible that they will do it on the with the right protections and the right processes, and taking it as seriously as we do, because it's impossible to justify those means if you're only doing it in 1 or 2 suburbs. If we're doing it across and enabling it, it actually gets to a cheaper price point for the security companies than them doing it themselves. They don't have to go hire configuration and engineers and storage and all of those. They don't have to really. We wrap it all up into a single service. We give it to them. We make sure that they're compliant, make sure that they're registered, and then we work out with our channel partners and bring that whole ecosystem and collaborative efforts. And the only way that you're going to, in our minds, is that you're going to make a dent against crime is, utilizing technology, because it's impossible that you can put enough people out in the streets and on every single corner. And 2 is that you need to all be pulling in that same direction. And if SAPS is trying to do their own initiative and JMPD is trying to do their own initiative, every security company, every homeowner, everyone's just disparate and nothing's talking to each other, and there's no collaborative effort, well, we don't think there's going to be, you're not going to make an impact or make a difference. If we can be that glue that pulls it all together and gets that ecosystem, pulling in in the same direction, you can really see powerful results. And we think it's just going to go from strength to strength in terms of really making an impact and a difference.
No, that's fantastic. Ricky, what is the impact of cameras not rolling out as planned? For example, where the JRA has refused to grant way leaves. And Emma, you can chip in on whether this is legally sound reason to stop the rollout.
If we can't, put up those cameras, well, then potentially a crime can take place and can't be prevented. And it won't stop that perpetrator from doing what they needed to do. And the impact can be as severe as loss of life. Yeah. So where someone could be fatally murdered. Alternatively, if that camera had existed and it flagged, or the number plate did come up on the vehicle of interest, the security company could have prevented that incident from taking place. So it is extremely severe in terms of not being able to roll this out, and something that we take seriously. And while we've actually brought an application against the JRA so that we can make sure we get our way leave, so we can get more cameras to make people more safer.
Great. Thank you so much. Emma, your side?
So I'm not involved in the litigation, but I have had sight of some of the papers, and I think that the ruling can't come fast enough. I think that it's absolutely bizarre that the JRA has refused to grant these way leaves. It does seem that they are completely overextending what they are required to do. What they're required to do is to make sure that the requirements have been satisfied and then grant the way leave, and not to make a decision on the privacy infringement or otherwise of what's going to happen with those way leaves. So it'll be interesting. I think it's also worth noting, that there are a lot of these CCTV cameras also. I'm thinking about when I go to court in town, and what a big song and dance was made about that when there was the CCTV footage in the Joburg CBD, and suddenly people felt a lot safer going to court, particularly for that was my interest, and you do feel a lot safer when you know that you are that what's going on is recorded. So it does seem weird that the JRA has taken this decision. I think it's completely outside the ambit of their powers, and I do believe that Vumacam will be successful in the application. I'm looking forward to following it. As I said, I'm not involved in the litigation. I've just had a quick look, and I think that the papers have been superbly drafted, and there's a very compelling case made by Vumacam and its legal team.
Oh, fantastic. We all watch it with bated breath, because as Ricky has just mentioned, and James as well, that the purpose of the Vumacam is not just for your area. And you guys have opened my eyes to this as well. So now I'm championing this for South Africa, because if I know that it's safe, that if I go from this area into Cresta, past Cresta, into Sandton, through Parkhurst, I'll know that I'm safe because it's covered. So whatever criminal elements are coming in, guess what? They've been identified within the parameters and the realm of Vumacam. So I feel safer driving there. So this is a thing we will all be watching, Emma. So thank you guys for that insight. final question to you, Ricky. How many security companies have you partnered with, and how often do the JMPD and SAPs use the service? We're getting a lot of positive comments coming through from some of our audience members.
So currently today we've got 40 companies that have subscribed to our services. So those are vetted and credited. And I think, through the POPI Act, when we onboard people, we even go so far as making the company a responsible party, because once they've got that data, what do they do with it, and going through those levels. With SAPS and JMPD, I would imagine probably a couple, 10 to 20, 30 times a day are probably getting called out on the back of our solution. So they're very actively involved. We've actually gone so far as partnering, and building with through the Eyes and Ears, which is a business against crime initiative. And we've actually published our platform in the SAPS War Room that's monitored with the Eyes and Ears project, so that SAPS gets live alerts through our platform and are actively involved. So we know that the companies don't have the same ability to make that arrest, and that SAPS and JMPD, but they do have local footprint, so they can get to incidents much quicker. But if they know that they're going to firstly get backed up by SAPS and JMPD, and secondly that they can pull them over, but then SAPS can detain and make the arrest, that's what shows that collaborative effort. And we've got hundreds and hundreds of use cases where the guys have been detained and SAPS have taken them down to the station.
Wow, that's great to know. Great collaboration in the essence of what James mentioned earlier as transparency, partnership, and just driving this forward as an ecosystem. And I think that definitely, as I heard the passion and the joy and the knowledge that you spoke about in your experience in this collective, I think it definitely is that glue you described, Ricky. Now we've reached the hour mark. We've got a couple of interesting questions and comments. Let's get to a few of them. And, the first one is from Heidi. She says, "Good day all. Is it possible for Vumacam to provide statistics about instances where their footage has been used in court during criminal proceedings?" I'll open to the floor.
James, you want to go? Huh?
Yeah, so we haven't had a piece of Vumacam footage tested in the court system yet. Obviously, there's a number of matters that I guess will be proceeding towards the courts. And again, we understand how that process is going to work. We're going to be tested. The systems are going to be interrogated by very, very smart advocates. Probably we'll find further things to improve. And we see this evolving much like the speed camera evolution. Initially, advocates were able to pull those systems apart, and you couldn't get a conviction for a speed camera. Now nobody really questions the efficacy or the legitimacy of those speed cameras. We anticipate that Vumacam will ultimately become a similar type of system. We do have a part of the business which we call evidence locker, which is really, as Ricky said, the 1% of footage that probably counts and lock it away. We need to be sure that we can maintain chains of custody to make sure that things are authentic and not tampered with. And obviously that needs to be watermarked, date stamped, time stamped, so that when it does eventually get through the system, because our preventing and catching criminals is one part of the challenge. Obviously the criminal justice system is another challenge. So we really, again, we look forward to that process. We're going to learn from it, and I'm sure we can come back and have another forum when we've gone through the first couple of successful prosecutions and share that as well. That's the nature of our business.
Fantastic. Great insight. Thank you for that, James. Ricky, a question for you from Kuna. If an estate would love to have the Vumacam cameras installed in the estate, how does the billing work? Does the estate pay the security company or Vumacam directly?
Yeah, so recently, we've seen a big opportunity to venture from the public space, as we call it, into that private space. We see that because we've built this engine and the mechanisms, the belts and braces, the intelligence on top of the system, it should extend back into shopping centers and office parks and estates. The difference there is that we don't come and rip and replace existing camera systems. We'll work with, camera systems so we, can obviously keep the cost down. But the intention is to work through our channel partners with the security companies, providing a more holistic technology solution onto that estate, whereby they can, deliver and monitor those feeds and be more efficient, but then they would still manage and maintain the relationship that they have with their estate.
Ah, fantastic. So it is scaling, it is growing, and the model is really getting entrenched into those close communities, whether it be a mall, an estate, or anything else of the sort.
And the benefit there, sorry if I can just jump in, but the benefit is, when an incident does take place at your estate, just like I'll go back to Jacques being hit and getting that CCTV footage. Well, if it's all collaborated and into that central system, that same modus operandi and vehicle would then be put into the public space. And when the guys are leaving their estate and they're driving through the networks, we could have up to 500 security vehicles now trying to intercept you. So, that's that partnership and the making sure that the platforms talk to each other and it's orchestrated in such a manner that we can get, even more successes and arrests that could take place.
That's fantastic, fantastic. At every touch point that I've experienced in our discussion today, it always boils down to the safety of people, the safety of areas, the safety of our nation. Fantastic. Now, there's a comment made here, and Amanda Brown has commented on it and asked a question. And James, this falls into what you mentioned earlier, that there's a person that says, Joe Soap seems to be under the impression that there's facial recognition. I'd like to know where he saw that. It boils down to, as you mentioned, James, knowledge is power. But if you have the incorrect knowledge, it could be a skewed power. So it boils down to getting the right knowledge. And this forum today has declared we don't do facial recognition as Vumacam. So all the questions in relation to that become null and void. And as we can see, get the right information from the right credible sources, from your website and all else. Would I be correct in saying that, team?
Yeah, I think obviously we need to, it's a big issue. I think the ultimate test for us is, so obviously we have a PIA manual, so I'm sure everybody's hopefully familiar with, the access to information that you can request from an organization. So obviously we have a PIA process, and we have had PIA requests where people say, here's my face and here's my ID number. Please send me all data that you have on me. Now, unfortunately, we have to write back to those PIA requests and say, you're anonymous. We are not able to send you data about you because you're anonymous. We are not able to pick up your face. We have no ability to match your ID number to your face. None of that data is available for us. I'm afraid that's the answer to your PIA request. So we welcome anybody on this forum or in the public or whoever to send us PIA requests as it relates to their faces.
Yeah.
You will not get a data reply from us because we're not able to match your face to the data in the system. Simple as that.
Great.
I'd like to butt in there as well. Famous butter over here, just call me goat. But I do want to say that under POPI, which as we've talked about hasn't you don't have to comply yet until the 31st of May 2021, but the company is already POPI compliant. And in terms of POPI, the Protection of Personal Information Act, then any data subject can request at any time from a responsible party what data they hold on the person, how it's stored, what they use it for, all the data protection principles. So it's not just a question of under POPI anymore. Under the data protection law, you can also request information held. But as we've said, a lot of the content obtained falls outside of the realm of POPI because it's anonymized. And as soon as the information doesn't attach to a specific person, then POPI doesn't apply. I've seen some questions about can it be used for insurance cases and all these things. In terms of POPI, there's the purpose specification. principle, which basically means that the data collected has to be used for the purpose stated. So it's not like, and we're saying that there's no facial recognition technology. We can't suddenly change our mind in 6 months' time and say, oh, actually, all that information that we have already, we're going to backdate and we are going to suddenly start using facial recognition technology on this historical information. POPI prohibits that. So if that gives some comfort to the viewers, then I hope that's useful.
No, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Another one of our comments have come through from Lizette Gomez. Crime is out of control. Well done, Vumacam. Something has to be done about it, and you're definitely leading the way. So again, it speaks to, again, as you mentioned, Ricky, 96% of the people polled in the areas are happy with it being in place. And I'm one of them. So, I might be biased, but I've experienced it and I've lived it. So it's an experience, from that basis. There are a couple of other questions, but Emma has tackled them. A lot of them were for Emma in that space. There's another question here that there's a concern that is Vumacam being co-opted by government in future to surveil all people the way it happens in China? And also, would there be interest from insurance companies to profile people for risk, and they'd be happy to pay for that data?
So I think there's many use cases, on the insurance side, and we see that up to 30% of claims are fraudulent claims. So the amount of money and fraud obviously is a criminal offense. So there's definitely a use case of working with insurance companies to benefit again society in terms of lowering premiums and all this because of the fraud and stuff that's taking place. And we see different, use cases in terms of, working with the guys, but in the best of the public, in your best ability. So what, is good for you, and how can we endorse, and how do we look at that? I think, again, like when you're going to look at racial profiling and all these, the systems that we've employed are non-biased, analytics and algorithms. So it learns individual pixels and then reports on exceptions, as opposed to, reporting on race or gender or any of these other things. So we're very, very specific in terms of the analytics that we adopt and put into, into our platform. And, going forward to be coerced, well, it's we own that. We out for on a mission. We're working with with communities, with security companies. We've been very transparent. And unless like the law comes and says by law you have to do this, of which we don't feel it's right, we will then fight it and make sure. But we're here for the communities, and we're here to make people safer, and that's our that's why we exist, and that's what we've set out and to achieve. So that's really the ethos and like what we're trying to who we are. And how we bring about it, and again, like you can see through the partnerships that we've adopted against the business against crimes and the local city improvement districts and the various security companies and communities. We are for the community, and we are here to fight crime and help everyday life. So there might be even a situation, and we've had it in the Sandton Improvement District, where the algorithms picked up that there's been leaks and water running down the road. And guys have then, dispatched Joburg Water, and that's been fixed. And guys going down wrong traffic lights, and so the behavioral analytic picks up different anomalies, and those things can then lead to making sure that everything's done and dealt with and more efficiently. And that's where we're here for the public interest, and that's why we exist.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, guys, there's so many great comments that have come through here. I mean, we put up a poll. And the question was, I think Vumacam is, and Ricky, I don't know whether you're a fortune teller, but your stats are consistent. 94% of individuals, about 200 of them in the session today, believe that Vumacam is a powerful tool to help in fighting crime. 94%. And 0% don't have a privacy concern, and 5% is not sure. So I really think that you're on a great wicket. I really think it's fantastic of what you're doing, and to the team, congratulations and pushing it forward. Emma, the final question I would put to you, it's from Andre. Andre mentions, Emma, what's the difference between a private person putting up a camera on the garden wall to Vumacam putting up a camera in the street?
Well, I think the most important is that Vumacam has come out and told you that they are operating legally, that they are POPI compliant, that they are concerned about privacy, that they don't use facial recognition technology. So I think that's the main thing, is that you're dealing with a responsible, accountable, law-abiding company. You know, if I just pop out of a camera on my street, I could reuse it for all sorts of purposes. You know, I could take somebody's face and Photoshop it onto a naked body and put it on a porn site and be like, ha ha ha, that's my neighbor. That's not what Vumacam is doing. You know, Vumacam has a particular and specific mandate, and that is to fight crime. And it's for me, very comforting. And I've done a lot of research. I hardly knew about this company a few weeks ago, bar the fact that I live in Dunkeld, and I know that we all pay a premium to live here because we have the lowest crime stats of any area in this, like any suburb in the whole area, because of our Vumacam cameras. And I've done a lot of research into the company. I've read all the court papers. I've really done my due diligence. Because, as I've said, I am a privacy advocate, and it's not like I think privacy is dead. I think that we all need to guard our privacy. But this particular company, the system that it's operating, the cameras that they're rolling out, they do not concern me from a privacy point of view.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. James, from your side, any parting words for us as we wrap up?
Yeah, so just again, you know, we are on a mission. In many respects, it's a mission we wish we didn't have, to be fair. We really would love to live in a country where, in fact, the Vumacam opportunity didn't exist. There are many countries in the world where this opportunity could never exist. It exists today in South Africa as a consequence of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. We're never going to solve poverty, equality, as individuals living our lives. So we can choose to do nothing about the problem, or we can choose to do something. And we've chosen to do something. It's not going to be perfect. We're very happy to learn, but we've chosen to do something. And that's what we're going to do.
Fantastic, fantastic. Ricky, from your side, final thought?
No, I think, you know, as I said before, you know, when we set out on this journey, and, you know, trying to achieve what we've done, you know, every single day we overachieve, and our expectations are, you know, are blown away in terms of the results and you know, the buy-in and the collaborative effort. So we just want to make, you know, South Africa a safer place. We can do our bit, and but we're only as good as our partners, and we're only as good as the ecosystem and people buying into that same common structure. And as you know, we're transparent and open, and if anyone has concerns, like, you know, welcome to get in touch with us, and we'll meet with you and understand it. And, you know, both from, you know, individuals to communities to government and municipalities. And I think that's who we are, and I think we want that message to be strong and clear, to say we aren't here to spy on you. We're here to assist in a pandemic that exists today.
That's fantastic. I think there's no better parting words than that you are reaching out to say, let us help you and walk with you side by side to tackle the scourge of crime that is infesting our streets, our homes, our neighborhoods, and our country. To our audience, thank you very much for your comments and your questions, for being present today. And I must say, this has been an informative session with Vumacam today. I think if one thing is clear, is that technology has a very important role to play in fighting crime. But it has to be done with a commitment to privacy. The Vumacam team says it wants to engage in concerns and collaboratively look at ways to fight crime. If you want to engage with the Vumacam team, drop them a mail on info@vumacam.co.za or visit vumacam.co.za. Emma, I wish you all the best in Dunkeld. When I can move around the hood, I'll come see you now that I know it's the safest neighborhood in Joburg, and maybe look at property on that side. Your commitment and your passion to making sure that everything that Vumacam does is legitimate, authentic, and open and transparent, I say is priceless, and that gives me so much peace of mind that we're working with a company that is integrity focused at every touch point. Thank you for creating that and for sharing that today. And to Ricky, man, you're the general leading this, and we support you 300%. As after today, like Emma, you know, saw the cameras up in my neighborhood, experienced this safety thing. Now I know where it stems from. I say to you and your team, within me, you have a soldier on the ground, not running in a safe neighborhood only, but it's willing to spread the message and the word, because these kinds of information sessions have empowered me with knowledge, our audience with knowledge, and that means they will empower others with that same knowledge too. Until next time, when we chat to everybody, stay safe and have a brilliant rest of the week. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Cheers.